Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to draw and paint with you today. And today we are going to be doing a request from the comment section of a previous video where someone had seen me flip through a sketchbook, this sketchbook, an old sketchbook, and saw this clock tower. And this was not from a video tutorial that already exists. This was just from my travels in England. Where I took my sketchbook and did a lot of plein air, observational sketching and painting. So they said, can you do, I think it was this clock tower. There are two clock towers, but this is the one I'm going to do. I also had this one, which was Big Ben from London. So Big Ben from London, but this is the clock tower. There are many clock towers throughout the whole of the UK, I have noticed. This was in Manchester, the clock tower across from the Hotel Indigo. I don't know exactly what the building was. It was a bank or something. Whoops. And so that's what we're going to do today. I am going to do just some basic sketching. I encourage you, if you want to do like architectural drawing, there are lots of artists out there with lots of videos on all of the technical parts of this. I am just doing observational, freehand, based on the rules that I know about like line and composition and perspective and all of that. But I'm just going to do some really basic sketching. So I encourage you to just to go out and observe and do some sketching. That's like the first step in starting this whole process before you even have to learn all the technical rules and everything around it. You can just do some fun, kind of what you see, try to recreate it on the page. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. There you go. So we have a little bit better perspective. All right, so this clock tower was on top of a building. There were other buildings kind of in front of it. So we're going to start with that. I'm going to start with the clock face in the center, which is just basically a big old circle. And then it's got some other circles inside it. So we got the outside edge here and then some other smaller edges inside that hold the details of the numbers. But yeah, the architecture, I'm sure there's a beautiful, there's some beautiful, wonderful architecture in the US, from modern to more historical, but the architecture in Europe and overseas and pretty much everywhere else is so interesting and unique and varied. All right, so I got my little, let's see, 1, 2, and I got, I feel like I did not draw these to scale, but it looks like a big old bullseye. But when we add in all the other details, hopefully this one could have been a little smaller, but you know what? I'm not going to obsess over it. I'm just going to keep on keeping on. You can shrink it a little bit with some sketchier lines to kind of broaden this. So I went right with, sorry, I didn't tell you what I'm using, but I went right with an illustration pen. This is an archival pigmented ink pen. This is from Artist Loft, which is like our local chain store from Michael's. It's their brand. Okay, and you can see I'm making the lines a little heavier on this side because in this we have light coming from this way, kind of going across the building. So I'm going to start that process with the drawing. And then these are the little tick marks for the seconds. You could make sure there are 60. I'm not going to. I'm just going to make it generally spaced. Around. And then inside there were a bunch of like symbols. I don't think they were Roman numeral symbols. I didn't create Roman numerals. It was like a diamond on the top and the bottom and on the quarter hours. And then some other symbols in between. So this is probably the most complicated part. You can make your time say whatever it wants. So you have your quarter hours, and then you just need 2 other little symbols in between. These were like, it looks like some kind of, I don't know, these little crosses. I think they had like a little diamond on top, almost like a little tree. But you don't have to worry about being exact. At least I don't. Some people do. I just like to get the essence of a piece. Light and shadow is the most important part. The overall kind of feel of it. Does it generally have the same scale and size? And all right, and then the hands, you can make them go whichever way you want. And they had a little flare out the back of them. One should be a little shorter than the other for hours and seconds. And there we go. So we have our clock face, and now I'm going to start to sketch in the edges of it. And again, I'm not looking at real life, I'm looking at whatever I drew here, so a lot of information was probably left out. And that's the great part about this, is you can leave out whatever information you want, but that still gives you the result that you want. So in here, I do want the center to be aligned with the center of my clock. So I'm just going to make sure I kind of... So I'm just going through. There's definitely some layers here. Of stone. This was all in stone. I did get to see, I think, a little bit of the side of this. And there was another building right in front here. Like right here. So I'm going to draw in. And it had a... angled little top to it here. Kind of angled this way. And you can see the side of the building like this. And then above it, you can see a little bit of the side here. Now somehow in this drawing, I feel like I have interpreted that you could see a little bit of the side of the building here as well, but you can't see both sides of the building if it's angled one way. Put our little dome on the top. And again, sometimes these things are, we start to sketch them, we're just observing, we're kind of letting our eyes and our hands wander through a piece and taking notice of different elements, of lights and shadows and how things behave, and just letting our brain kind of take it all in. So first sketches can be really interesting. You see what you notice and what you leave out. And this had like another little thing on top. And again, it's up to you what you want to include and what you want to leave out to make this your own piece. That's the beauty of art. We're not doing an exact representation of whatever we see. That's why we have cameras. Everyone has one in their pocket now these days. And you can certainly do some really amazing and interesting things with photography to help the viewer see things differently, or more clearly, or more precisely, or in a way that is unusual. But in painting, you can really do whatever you want in drawing, because you can add in elements, take out elements, really help the viewer focus on certain parts of the details. I'm just sketching my way through. All right, I think I'm done with and I think what happened here is actually this is just a shadow that's being cast. Like the side of the building is catching light, but then there's like a little shadow. I don't know. I don't know what I did. But once you're done with that part of it, and this one is actually a lot taller than this one. I should have cut it off like right here, but it's fine. I have a tall clock tower. We're going to go ahead and start to paint in the light and shadow. So you don't have to go with perfectly realistic colors. You just want to go with lighter values, brighter values in the highlights, and then darker values in the shadows. I'm going to stick with a palette similar to this, these orangey colors. You can maybe add in orangey and then this grayish purple. So let's see. I'm going to take my purple. I'm going to add a little phthalo blue to it. I'm going to blue it out a little bit, make it a little more gray. I'm going to take a tiny bit of yellow. Now it's a nice gray color. So I'm going to start on this side. And I'm just going to start to block in shadowy areas. I'm going to start with a lighter shadow. And then we'll add layers of darker shadows. Now, with buildings and angles, it's great to be out and observe because you'll be able to see things like if the light is coming from this way, it'll be hitting the side of the building here, and this side will be in shadow. But if you see here, we also have a shadow here, even though it's on this side, because this is blocking some light. You see what I'm saying? So when you're out, it's sometimes hard to wrap your brain around that, but when you're looking at things in real life and going, okay, why is it doing that? Or where is that darkness coming from? And then you look around the painting, or sorry, around the scene, and it's like, okay, the shadow is casting off of that onto there. And because light can be tricky. It can be tricky to wrap your head around how the whole world kind of interacts with everything else and interacts with light. So, and then this, the sun is coming from this way, so the further down you get, the more in shadow you get, but it's going to hit this wall because it's facing. This one is flat to it, but this one is angled towards it. I hope that all makes sense. So I'm just kind of blocking in these shadowy areas. And this was kind of on a bright sunset day, so you would get lots of brightness and yellowness from the sun as it was setting, and those dramatic rays of sun kind of coming across. So I'm going to use some Diarylide yellow here. I think I'm going to add a little magenta to it. This has more of an orangey feel to it. Add lots of water. So the sun's coming across, there's going to be a shadow here, but it's kind of getting inside here. It's peeking into this area. And under here it will be darker. Don't worry about the clock face yet. We'll get there. But then like this side of this building, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but this is how I paint from observation. I do a lot of jumping around. It's not very meticulous. You can do it differently. This is just what works for me. I try not to overthink things as I block stuff in, especially when I'm out and about. All right, let's make a little more. This shadow color, purple, Dioxazine purple, Phthalo blue, and a little yellow. Let's do a little more purple, a little more blue. So we're going to go darker under the clock. We're going to create a cast shadow behind this building. And then using yellow, like this yellowy color and purple, like we can just overlay purple as a shadow in some of these areas, and they're going to mix together and make like a brownish yellow color. Let's get darker on this front here. And this one is going to be a little darker too because it's angled away. Some of my stuff is creeping in here and I don't want that. Diarylide yellow, a little magenta. Like this orangey, darker orangey color. And let's pick up a little phthalo blue. And then on this side, like the side of the building is getting the most sun, but the corner is kind of casting a shadow here. All right. So we can let a bunch of this dry and then reassess. Throw in a little yellow over here just because I can. Just recognizing where you want to go darker. I forgot to finish painting the rest of the front of this building over here. And you can get carried away with this. Don't get me wrong. All right, so let's let that stuff dry, and I want to focus on the clock face. So again, some light spilling over the clock face. This part of it is going to be the lightest, and then it's going to have some shadow on the other side. So let's take some cadmium yellow. I'm going to water it way down, and I'm going to add a touch of magenta to give it this like burnt paper kind of color. But lots of water. All right, so let's paint that on this side. Feel free to leave a spot or two of just pure white paper, because this clock, a lot of the clocks often are also kind of giving off a little light from behind them. At night, you can definitely see it. But even as the sun starts to fade. All right, and then as we create shadow around here, it starts to push the clock out a little bit, which is great. All right, this I want to be a little more neutral, less purple, a little more gray. So I'm adding a little blue and a tiny bit of yellow. It's probably a little too much. The yellows are so pushy, for yellows anyway. All right, we're gonna put shadow on this side, under a little, on the kind of separation of the parts, the levels. All right, I just pulled in a little Payne's gray. I'm going to add some purple to the Payne's gray, add some blue. I want it to have a little bit of a blue cast to it. I don't want it, but I do want it to go darker. There we go. And some of this will be me letting this dry too. So we went kind of on the edge here. We can let this dry and put in some darker, richer shadows as that front part dries. But let's put a darker shadow underneath the clock that way. And let's go back up here. Put another dark shadow under there, under here, on the side of the building. On the front of this one, and the underside here. And then I like the brightness here, but I do want to add a little bit more, I think, yellowness to it. A little bit of magenta, a little bit of yellow. Water. I'm basically just doing a glaze over top of it with a little bit more yellow color. I don't want it to get much darker, but just a little brighter. All right, and then we're going to let this all dry and see where we need to add anything else. But this is fun, just kind of really going in and tackling light and shadow, using interesting colors. I definitely want to put a little bit darker shadow on the side of the actual clock face. I'm trying to think of anything else. I guess maybe a little bit more under here, like the whole way around. And blend that out a little bit. It's a little bright under here. And I do want to go a little darker on this corner. Up here. And maybe down the side. All right, I'm going to let it dry. We'll come back and see what we have. All right, it's nice and dry, and I'm just going to add a tiny bit more shadow in some areas, but otherwise I am happy with this. Now, lots of clock towers are going to have a lot more detail in the other areas. I just left it out and really wanted to focus on the face of the clock and just the edges and the angles of the buildings, the light and the shadow. So that's your prerogative. You can do that. You don't have to paint every little detail. I'm sure there were more. I can't remember now. I'm sure I have a picture somewhere of like all the little stone carved details that were on this. I'm sure this building had some windows and other ledges and other things in it, but you don't have to put them in. There you go. Just going a little darker on that side, under here. Bringing a little bit more contrast in a few spots. which is really the name of the game. Build your contrast. Can even put a little Payne's gray. I might regret it. There we go. And then this one. I think I'm going to go a little more yellow, just a glaze of yellow over here. Like the light is bright, but it's also very vibrant at this time of day. I feel like this is a better representation of that. And then even going like darker here. Behind this building. And let's just blend them together and call it a day. All right, there is our clock tower. Obviously this one is much taller and thinner. Probably should have cut it off like right here, but you know, I was just going from, oh, and this one actually has a little bit of an idea of a building over in this corner, like a roof or something over there. We'll just, there we go. All right, there we go. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was the clock tower you were talking about or was a sufficient replacement for it. To my commenter, I believe her name is Jenny. Jenny, is this your clock tower? Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the description for links to supplies and materials, whether it's brushes or the sketchbook that you like, or my paints or other supplies that I use like pens and dryer tools and kneaded erasers. Those are all linked in the description. In addition, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Love to read your comments, and share this with a friend who might also want to paint a clock tower. Thanks for following along on this watercolor journey. We are on some day in the 80s. I think this is 86 or 87, quickly approaching day 100. So keep painting out there. Happy painting, y'all, and we'll see you for their next page in our watercolor journal very soon.